to another edition of This is Metal with Joe Lawson. This week, Joe, we're going to be doing one of my all-time favorite bands, Ratt. And I don't know, some people say, well, they're metal, they're not metal. That's to be determined. Now, I dare tell people, go all the way back to 1983. Before, this predates Out of the Cellar, which many people know Round and Round from. If you go back to that 83 EP self-titled Ratt, it's a lot harder than anything they've ever done. So there's always been kind of elements of hard rock and metal with what Ratt does. But I'll tell you, one of the things I've always loved about Ratt is great songwriting, I tell you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. For the genre and stuff, the style of stuff that they were doing, they just had this raw, raunchy, edgy sound and a good commercial hook and good songwriting, and it worked.
And I think part of the reason for that is, from what I know, and I know quite a bit about Ratt, Stephen Piercy, he started out like a lot of guys, primarily as a guitar player. And then early on, when he was a teenager, he got like ran over by a car or something, and he was like off of his knees, and he couldn't walk and stuff for months and months. Took a very long time for him to heal. And during that time, he kind of learned to play the guitar. And when he started playing in bands, he was initially a guitar player, and when it came time to form Ratt, he became a singer just kind of out of necessity. There was nobody else in the band. They said, okay, well, we think you can sing probably the best, but even to this day, he considers himself more of a guitar player, and I think that's part of what you're saying, why even initially, before Warren DeMartini ever gets into the band, that's why all these great Ratt songs got all these great hooks and guitar solos,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, like I said, it's just a raw, raunchy sound, and especially when they first came out, the first couple of records, they just had this edge about them, and it really worked. And Stephen Piercy's voice was a big part of that.
Yeah.
I think that, he's not like an amazing, he doesn't have this gigantic range or anything.
But I tell you, he is the voice of Ratt.
Distinctive kind of raunchy, down and dirty voice, and it just fit Ratt's music and their whole image and everything. So it worked, and it worked really well for him. And the first couple of records, I was a huge fan of. I mean, I like what they did throughout their career.
Yeah.
But especially the first couple of records, and something interesting you may or may not know, when they did their first couple of records, they shared an amp, and they didn't have enough money to go out and buy all these amps and stuff like bands do when they're famous and today. So they used one amp, and that recorded the EP, and I believe Out of the Cellar. Mm-hmm. Well, after that point, by the time Invasion of Your Privacy came around in 85, 86, of course, they were seeing some success and had some money coming in. And they went and bought different amps, and they're going to try all these different amps, and they went through this crazy long process of trying out all these different amps. I think it was like 28 or 30 amps that Warren DeMartini ended up buying, and trying to get different guitar tones and different sounds. And at the end, when it was all said and done, he wasn't happy with the sound, so he went back to that old beat-up amp that he used on the EP.
And
because he liked that sound so much.
And a lot of people may not even realize that, Ratt is thought of as a Los Angeles-based band, but they got their start in San Diego. Both Piercy and Robin Crosby, the original guitar player, they were from San Diego, and they were playing in competing bands, but they knew each other from the local music scene. And eventually, by the time Stephen and Robin start playing together, Stephen tells him, "Hey, listen, I think I just seen this band Van Halen in L.A. We need to move our band out there, because nothing is happening in San Diego like what's happening in L.A." And interestingly enough, those guys became, especially Piercy, became real good friends with Eddie Van Halen. And I was reading in Stephen Piercy's book that he put out a few years ago that him, up until when Edward Van Halen passed away, they were still like pretty good friends, and they lived like, at one point, Van Halen lived right next door to Stephen Piercy, and he said Piercy said that Van Halen always used to ask him when he was married to Valerie Bertinelli, "Hey man, can I hide my liquor over at your house so my wife won't know about it?" But I mean, what a cool story to be able to tell people, oh, hey, I'm friends with Ed, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, Warren DeMartini in his own right, to me, again, for this kind of music and stuff, he was up there in my top favorite guitar players. I mean, he's just a real tasteful guitarist, tasteful songwriter. I love his solos.
Oh yeah.
Just a talented guy, man, and a big part of that Ratt sound was.
Oh, him. For sure.
Not to sell Robin Crosby short, but Warren DeMartini's guitar playing was very impressive.
Well, here's the thing with that. You know, I don't know if you know this part of a Ratt story, but before Warren DeMartini was ever in Ratt, another San Diego kid, that's where they initially hooked up with him. Before he was ever in Ratt, the original guitar player from Ratt was Jake E. Lee, who would eventually go on to, of course, play with Ozzy. And by the time Jake was ready to leave Ratt, Jake and Warren were friends, like from the local San Diego music scene. And before Warren even joined the band, him and Jake lived together, and Jake taught Warren how to play all the Ratt songs. You know, like this is around around the time of the EP, before they'd really had any kind of major hit or anything. But the stuff that they'd been playing in their set up until that point, Jake E. Lee taught Warren how to play all that stuff, and Warren, like you said, he developed his own kind of style. And
absolutely, yeah. He's a great guitar player and great songwriter.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Warren, like you said, early on I heard stories about how Robin and Warren were they're supposed to be like a real kind of guitar team, but the thing was, more and more, everybody else in the band, the producers, the managers, everybody just around the band just started to realize, Warren is really the guitar hero of the band. He's like you said, sadly he kind of overshadowed Rob and Crosby. Not that Crosby wasn't a great rhythm guitar player, he was, and he definitely had his place in the band. But I think where Rob and Crosby really shined and what he really brought to the into the Ratt picture was his ability as a songwriter. I mean, him along with Piercy and Juan Crocier and Warren DeMar, all great. All four of those guys they wrote all the hit songs. They were all the major players that wrote all those hit songs that we all know and love today.
Yeah, absolutely. Robin Crosby and Stephen Piercy co-wrote "You Think You're Tough."
Yeah.
They're a hit from 1983 self-titled EP. And then many years later, a singer, Joe Lawson, would cover that song in a cover band in Ohio.
Wow.
So.
And here's a little trivia for you, Joe. I don't know if it's been a while probably since you've seen the video for that, but can you name some of these top rockers that were made a cameo appearance in that video for "You Think You're Tough"?
Gosh, you know what? I really couldn't.
Nikki Sixx.
It's been so long.
Tommy Lee.
Since I've seen that. Tommy Lee was in that? Yeah, that sounds
Nikki
familiar.
Sixx, and I think even Carmine Apiece.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Just looking down the rundown of guitar players is crazy that have been through Ratt.
Yeah.
You got Jake E. Lee, Warren DeMartini, Robin Crosby, Michael Schenker, Kerry Kelly, who also played with Alice Cooper and did A New Revenge. The project with Tim Ripper Owens and Sarzo. John Corabi actually played guitar for Ratt. Did you know that? Yeah, I remember. Okay, now here's an interesting story. That's interesting, man.
Okay, now I knew about that, and at the time, see, John Corabi, that's he was out of Motley Crue at that point. His band with Bruce Kulick, which was called Union. I always loved that band. They only had these two great albums of the band. Kind of, after that, kind of fell apart sadly, and so he was just looking to get a gig at the time. But I remember thinking, man, what is a guy like John Corabi doing playing rhythm guitar and Ratt? I get it. Maybe you need to pay the bills, and I understand that. But that just goes to show you that you do what you need to do, as they say, to feed the family.
Right. Yep.
And
absolutely.
And see, so and another guy that was in that played on the very last Ratt album, Infestation, was Carlos Cavazo from Quiet Riot.
Yeah, there's another big name. Interesting.
Yeah, and see, and in fact, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I seen an interview just a few weeks ago. I'll send you the links because I'm sure you'll love to check it. It's a video interview, but with George Lynch, where he was talking about recently, after Warren DeMartini left the band about a year and a half ago, that all the Ratt guys are friends with George Lynch, and I guess there was an offer for him to join, but George said he turned it down for a couple of reasons. He said, first of all, anytime that I'm going to get involved with the band, I'm going to want to have some say in the band. In other words, like he still plays off and on sometimes and makes guest appearances with Dawkins, because that's where everybody knows him from, and so you can kind of understand that. But he said, okay, if I was to join Ratt and be Warren's replacement, I wouldn't have any say in the band. I'd be a hired gun. I don't do stuff like that,
Right.
And so, and
he doesn't. And in all fairness, he doesn't need to.
No, he doesn't.
The name that he's earned himself, there's no reason for him to do that.
But I think I'm going to send you the link later, Joe, and I think you'll enjoy watching this video with George Lynch, because he really goes deep, like talking about when he was first starting out, like some of the things he did, because he was like dirt poor, and he's talking about like twice he got turned down for the Aussie gig, and he said like the last time they offered him a gig, and then Sharon took it back for some stupid reason, like she thought Jake E. Lee looked more like a rock star, and she didn't think George should be in the band because at the time his hair was short.
Right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we discussed that previously. But so Out of the Cellar came out in '84, and that's one of my favorites too. I mean, it's got great songs on it, and it's a perfect example of what I mean by a raw, raunchy sound. Yeah. It really is, and it was successful. It worked.
And here's the thing. See, everybody knows Round and Round. That's the hit single. But if you go and you get yourself Out of a Cellar and you put it on,
it's good from start to finish.
Yeah, there's more than just Round and Round. Wanted Man.
There's some great hard rock songs on that.
Wanted Man. There is one of my all-time favorite Ratt tunes. That's a great tune. Back for More. Lack of
Communication.
Now,
that's a good one.
I seen when they had this documentary on Ratt on it was called Behind the Music on VH1 a number of years ago, and the bass player Juan Crosier, he was saying Lack of Communication, that's one of his songs that he's the chief writer on, and like when I first heard that song, I kind of really always loved what Steven did to the song, and I hear Steven talk about this in the documentary where he talks about Juan didn't like the fact, he says, okay, Steven, because he's a singer, he feels like he needs to do something with the lyrics to kind of be able to do a thing with it. And he says, originally, the way Steven sings it, that's not how I wrote the song. And Steven said, well, I need to do something. So he's like, that's why if you listen to the song, he goes like, lack off. He says that's how Steven kind of interprets the song. And he said they got in this big argument, and Steven ripped his lyrics up in front of his face, and the band's been very dysfunctional even since like day one. But I tell you, they got the hits.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing for a singer to just kind of do as you're told.
Yeah.
I've been in band situations like that too, and I won't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Unless there's a big paycheck involved, I wouldn't do it. I'm going to sing it my way, and if they don't like it, then pay me.
Yeah, and
that's the way I look at it too. So I don't blame Steven one bit for that.
Yeah.
As a singer, you have to put your own thumbprint on it. You have to be able to identify with it, and you have to have some kind of connection to it, some kind of passion for it.
And then I tell you that
it has to come out of that singer the way that singer feels it and hears it. And if you don't give them the freedom to do that, you're not going to get the best out of that singer, regardless of what your ego says about how you wrote the song. Yeah,
and I tell you, the producer Bo Hill. I mean, it's the very first time.
And any producer will tell you the same thing. Absolutely.
But the producer Bo Hill, he was really responsible too for the Ratt sound, because that's why if you listen to those first 4 Ratt albums that most of the hits are on and stuff, he's the guy that produced all those albums. He is really responsible for that Ratt sound as well as the band. But I heard him talking about the different players, the different guys in the band, what it was like to work with each of them. And for example, he was saying the drummer, Bobby Blotzer, how he was the most difficult of all the guys to work with. He says, for example, he's a drummer, and typically the drummers don't really get involved with the songwriting. And when he seen how all the other guys, because they were all involved with the songwriting, they started getting a lot of royalty checks. He's like, "Where's mine?" And they're like, "Well, Bob, you didn't write anything." And so, the drummer made such a fit about it that some of the guys kind of threw him a bone and said, "Okay, we'll just lie and we'll give you a credit on this song and this song." But he really didn't even write on any of his songs, but they just kind of threw him a bone. Have you ever had to do anything like that in the bands you've been in, Joe?
Well, not at that level, but that's something that you got to discuss as a band. Right from the get-go.
Yeah.
How are you going to divide things up? If you are successful, songwriters get royalties, and if you're just a musician in the band and you don't write anything and you just play an instrument, then unless there's some kind of prearranged agreement, you're not going to get that royalty.
Yeah.
So, as a drummer, that's something that needs to be discussed with your bandmates, before you guys record anything or move on to any potential success, Nowadays, not so much anymore because there's no such thing as a music industry, but, back in the day, that was a very real situation that a lot of bands got in big arguments and big crazy fights and legal battles and all kinds of shit over.
Oh yeah, and speaking of legal issues, this is one band very dysfunctional for many years, and that's why myself and I know a lot of other Ratt fans had a problem with the drummer Bob Blotzer when a few years ago he, Ratt was very inactive. None of the other guys were wanting to do anything, and he was, well, I'm going to go and form my own Ratt. I'm going to call it first. He was going to call it the Bobby Blotzer Ratt Experience, which, okay, I can kind of go along with that because it's not calling it Ratt. But then I think he had it planned from the get-go because, like the night before this Bobby Blotzer's Ratt Experience was to play the Whiskey in L.A., he decides, well, you know what, we're just going to call it Ratt. And he went and he had a backdrop that said Ratt that night, and then all the other guys got wind of it, and there was this big lawsuit, and he tells them, well, none of the other guys want to tour. I only wants to tour, so I am Ratt. And
right.
And we see how things kind of played out for him. He's no longer in the band, but what's funny is if this guy who's not even an original member, he had the gall to think that he could call his band Ratt, where and he's not even an original member of Ratt, which many people may or may not know. And what's funny is Juan Crosier at that time, he'd been out of Ratt for 20 years. And if Bob had not sued all the other guys, they would not have found some of his stuff out. And they found out like the original Ratt partnership was null and void or something, no longer legal. And so like Juan, who's been out of the band for 20 years, is like owed all this money. Bobby Blotzer owns nothing in the Ratt name. And they were able to vote him out. It's just a silly situation.
Yeah, sounds like it. A lot of legal
mumbo jumbo
just to get down to the nitty gritty. But it's a shame because they were such a great band. Those first few albums, Invasion of Your Privacy, that's another great album.
Yeah.
It didn't have quite the commercial success, but I liked it. I still thought it was a great album. And the 13-year-old me, actually, my first rap sheet was I was in the store and I tried to sneak out with it in my pants. So
yeah.
So I liked it even back then, even in the 80s.
Yeah.
So
even myself.
It was a good album, and it also featured Tawny. How do you say her
Tawny
name?
Katane.
Katane, yeah. And wasn't that Robin Crosby's girl?
Yeah. In fact, he started dating her.
Yeah, she passed away not too long ago.
Yeah, and I never heard what the official cause of death was. I'm kind of I don't want to assume, but who knows? But yeah, she started dating Robin, I guess, shortly after she had dated OJ, and apparently OJ made some threats to Robin that, hey, stay away from my girl, and this even predates him killing his wife allegedly.
Wow, good thing she got out of that relationship, huh?
Yeah, and
boy.
Robin Crosby is another reason I wanted to do this episode of This Is Metal. He, to me, is a big part of the Ratt band. I mean, for years, the other guys, I mean, they all had nicknames for each other. And Robin was the guy they called King because he was kind of the guy in the band everybody looked up to. He was kind of the peacemaker, if you will, and he was like Stephen Piercy's right hand man in the sense that, like I said, they wrote a lot of those early Ratt hits, and that's another reason I had a problem with Bobby Blotzer going out calling his fake Ratt because, okay, I wouldn't have really had Juan Crosier. He went out and he didn't call his band Ratt, but he did these solo shows, and his set list pretty much was the Ratt catalog, and I didn't have as much problem with him doing it for the simple fact that he's one of the 4 guys that that wrote all these hit songs that we love. Bobby Blotzer didn't write a lick, and he's got the gall to go out. First of all, he's not even an original member, suing the other the other 3 surviving band members who wrote all the hits.
It sounds like this guy just needed his ass kicked.
Yeah.
They could have avoided all that just by a good old fashioned beatdown.
Yeah, and that's why the Ratt is in the sad state that it is because I guess recently Stephen Piercy, I seen him in one of his video interviews where he was talking about that he really didn't want to go public, but he's letting everybody know that he recently he battled liver cancer. I know he was a heavy drinker for years. That's probably got something to do with it. I guess he's all right now, but and because of
that was a diagnosis that he recently made a statement to his fans to let people know.
Yeah.
But this actually was a situation that he's been battling with for 3 years now.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't understand that he recently kind of made peace with Bobby Blotzer. He had him play as a special guest at one of his recent solo shows. And so, from Steven's perspective, a guy that maybe not too long ago didn't know, if he was going to be alive much longer, maybe things have changed for him. Like, well, maybe I want to make peace with everybody before I maybe meet my maker. Who knows? But
yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing like death to make you change your perspective on life.
Yeah, but I think the other 2 guys, from what I hear, Warren and Juan, they want nothing. And Steven's pretty much saying, okay, well, they got these other guys out, these replacement members, and they got commitments to do some live shows. But Steven's thing is like, okay, if we're going to do a brand new Ratt record, I want all the original Ratt guys that are still here to be on it. Otherwise, I see no point in continuing on Ratt. I'll continue to make solo records. I don't think Warren Bow and Juan are too willing to get up there with Bobby Blotzer because he just caused a lot of trouble. He said too much smack.
Too much shit. Yeah, too much bad blood there.
I mean, he was the stupidest one in the band. That the other 3 guys I think were pretty smart. They stuck together and. They didn't really say too much while the court, but every day you'd have Bobby Blotzer, I don't believe a word they're saying, you just wait and see, and he'd be trashing all the guys, and then if anybody would question what he was doing with his fake Ratt, he'd attack his fans. I think that's where you kind of go a little too far, where you're attacking your fans, and I think I told you a story before. Bobby Blotzer, for a guy I've never met, he's one guy in the music business I probably really hate, and it's kind of a funny story because when all this was going on, I made some comment on his page to the effect that hey, you're always trashing Steven and Warren and Juan, and you're going out and playing the songs they wrote, and it wasn't just me, but it was other people saying similar stuff, and like, okay, anytime you say anything like that against him, he's no longer your Facebook friend. Who cares? And he'd start attacking his own fans, and it's not. And funny story, when he attacked me, it got on Metal Sludge, and like I mentioned on Metal Sludge, I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, Bob. Okay, that's cool. I don't mind.
yeah, he made you famous.
Yeah. But
good for him. Fuck that guy, and let's not waste too much time about a great band.
No, but
with a nasty rotten apple that didn't even write any of the songs.
Yeah, but
so let's shift gears for a minute, if you don't mind. Let's talk about Dancing Undercover, 86, 87.
Yeah.
This was a different album. This was the first album that didn't feature a chick on the record.
The band.
It was a pretty cool T-shirt design. It had all their faces, the band members' faces. On the album cover, and it had some good songs on it. Bodytalk and
now Bodytalk, may or may not.
Really good one. I really liked the Slip of the Lip. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
And Bodytalk ended up on Eddie Murphy's The Golden Child, so that probably helped him out a little bit.
Joe, I will tell you, that is one of my favorite albums. just for a lot of reasons. Maybe also for the fact that I went to see Ratt for the first time on that tour. And the cool thing about it in retrospect is that was like, Ratt in its prime with the still classic original lineup. That was, I think, when Robin Crosby was still at the top of his game. I mean, as great as Warren was, I remember seeing the band live. And I love seeing both guys. But Robin was still on top of his game. Maybe that's why it really kind of stood out to me. And then even if you see videos of the band later on, when Robin was still in the band, eventually, like around 91, right before the band started to break up and before Robin was kicked out of the band, he was able for several years to kind of hide his drug habit. None of the other guys, they thought maybe he was a heavy drinker, but he kept it well hidden for many, many years until, like I think in 1988, they played this big show in Japan. And they said like his playing was it was sloppy, and people in the audience, it was so bad that he couldn't hide it. People in the audience and the whole arena was noticing, and that was the last show he ever did with the band, because at that point they realized they tried to send him to rehab and get him help, but he could never kick his heroin habit. Even up until the day he died, he was still struggling with it, they said.
Yeah, that's a shame. A lot of good, talented musicians have died from that.
And also,
we talked about that before, and it's a shame, because who knows what would have happened? Here's another situation, okay, where who knows what would have happened if that guy would have went and got clean and got his shit together, and came back, was able to come back, a few years later or whatever, and continue on with Ratt and with Stephen Piercy and the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be a whole entire completely different
story to Ratt.
Historical situation and storyline for the whole band of Ratt.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Just from that one guy getting his shit together and coming back to the band. Could have changed everything.
It's amazing when you make that point, because I've often, told people, Robin Crosby, he's one of these rock guys who I really think they need to make a movie about. I mean, because not just the rise of Ratt, but the rise and the fall of Robin Crosby is breathtaking. I mean, I seen him in this Behind the Music documentary, again, used to be on VH1, and it's the very last public interview he ever gave before he died, and he died on June 6th, 2002. But anyways, some of the stuff he said in that final interview, he says, okay, look, he goes, I've lived the life of 10 men. Nobody feels sorry for me. When you come to when they have my funeral, let's throw a party. And the thing is, by the time he gave this interview, okay, if you could go online and look for it, but you'd be amazed at the way the guy looked. At that point, he was really, what killed him was not so much heroin, but he'd stuck himself with a dirty needle, and as a result of that, he got AIDS from HIV, and whatever he had, it caused him some ailment with his pancreas. It caused him to like blow up. Like you said, people look at me now, they think I overeat or whatever. But it got so bad that he blew up to like 400 pounds. He was constantly having to lay down. He couldn't move around too much. At that point, he's no longer playing guitar. He's just kind of fighting fighting each day for the rest of his life to live. But and that's the thing he said. I wish I knew now what when I got started my heroin habit. I wish I knew now what I know, because he says I realized heroin is stronger than me. It's stronger than anybody. And you listen to this guy talking, you could tell how intelligent he was, but yet just this one drug was what brought this guy down. Yeah. It's a powerful and dark force, man. Absolutely. Yeah, and the final point
going back to your comment about the tour that you saw him on in their prime. So that was right around probably, it sounds like 87. Did you see him with Poison?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Monsters of Rock tour?
Well,
that was one of their top gross selling tours ever.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Okay, when I seen them, it was 1987. The year before Poison had released Look What the Cat Dragged. Now, I'd never heard of Poison until, I found out, okay, who's this band Poison is opening up? Never heard of them. And then I go to a record store, I find the record, I get it. And then I'd heard, before I ever bought the record, I'd heard the single Talk Dirty to Me. which is what broke that album. And before I even knew who Bret Michaels or Poison was, I'm hearing it on the radio, and Alice Cooper had just come back, and I'm thinking, sounds like Alice Cooper, but then I find out, no, it's this band, Poison, and I tell you, that was like the ultimate show. Ratt and Poison, I mean, because again, Poison's just coming out at the time with their debut album, prime of their career, you know?
Right.
And you may not be a Poison fan, but I'll tell you, they're one of those bands, Joe, that if you like 80s rock, I mean, Poison, if they never put out another new album, they're one of those bands that can live off their catalog of music.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, they were hugely successful. There's no denying
Talk
that.
Dirty to Me, Nothing But a Good Time, I'm Skinny Bop. Probably all songs you may not be a huge fan of, but you've heard, if you know what I mean.
Oh, of course. Of course. But 88 and 89, Ratt came out with Reach for the Sky, and I remember that one pretty vividly. Mm-hmm. And it went to number 17 on Billboard, so this was a pretty highly successful album for them, and they got some good airplay, some good MTV support, and it really fermented their success as a band long term wise. I think when they put Reach for the Sky out, I mean that sealed the deal for them. I mean they were here to stay after that.
Now, I'll tell you some things you may or may not know about Reach for the Sky, but they've kind of they never really wanted it to get out there. A lot more people are finding out about this, but that is when the band is starting to discover that something is going on with Robin Crosby, and so for the Reach for the Sky sessions, he was not really there, and from what I understand, they brought in Jake E. Lee on a couple of the tracks, but Warren DeMartini's like playing practically all the guitars on that album, and then he came back and did the tour. But again, that was, and then around 1990, which you're probably going to get to next, that's when they decide, okay, first, Robin's too much of a liability at that point. He can't play like he used to. He's not showing up for his sessions. So they try to get him into rehab. And that's at the point when they bring Michael Schenker into the band you were saying. And you could probably go online and check this out. Ratt appeared on MTV Unplugged. And it was not Robin Crosby, but Michael Schenker who took his place for that gig.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, when they did Detonator, that makes sense with everything you're saying.
Yeah.
If Robin Crosby was such a big part of the songwriting, I think this is where they really started getting more involved with getting people to write songs for them. Desmond Child
Diane Warren
came in and co-wrote some of the album songs for that.
In fact, Desmond Child did
and that makes sense, like you're saying. If Robin Crosby was getting all fucked up and couldn't maintain himself, they needed to pull some heavy hitting songwriters in, and that's what they did.
And here's the thing too,
come
Joe.
Up with Giving Yourself Away and Loving You's a Dirty Job.
And here's the thing with that too, Joe. I don't know if you realize, besides on the songwriting, Desmond Child. Also, along with this other guy, Sir Arthur Pace, I don't know who he is, but they were listed as producing the album. And they had stopped working with the original producer, Beau Hill. And they brought this is for Reach for the Sky now, before we get to Detonate, because they're no longer working with Beau Hill. They were just wanted to try something new. They brought in this guy, Mike Stone, who had previously worked with Queen, so they thought, okay, we'll use Queen's producer. But I heard the guy say how he really effed up the Reach for the Sky sessions. They had to go back and get Beau Hill, scrap what this guy Mike Stone did, because he was just drunk all the time. And so they ended up on Reach for the Sky working with Beau Hill one last time. And then, like you said, they want to go for a different sound. And Desmond Child, he's brought in a lot of other people to help with the songwriting. And I guess they seemed, because at that time, Desmond Child was working with Kiss, Bon Jovi, Aerosmith. I thought maybe Ratt thought, we want to have that kind of success again. Let's see what he can do for us. But it did not work for Ratt.
Yeah, it just missed the mark. I mean, it wasn't terrible.
No, I'll tell you,
it charted. I mean, it did okay, but it didn't meet the label's expectations, the band's expectations, or their previous success either.
Yeah, and here's what's funny about that is, okay, I do like the two singles. I mean, I like it kind of all, but like I think the two standout tracks got to be the two singles, Shame, Shame, Shame. That's probably my all-time favorite, and Lovin' You is a Dirty Job. Lovin' You is a Dirty Job is kind of a different kind of sound, but they went with it.
Yeah, more bluesy.
Yeah. See, and Warren is one of those guitar players. You bring up kind of more of a bluesy feel to it. He can play the blues. He can play rock. He can play pretty much anything they need him to play.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too. By the time Detonator comes out, like I said, I guess that's final tour they do for Ratt is, and at that point, I've heard Steven talk about it many times. He says it wasn't even the record company. We had like 2 more records to do on our contract. He says by the time after the Detonator tour, Robin is no longer in the band. He's like been my right hand man. He goes, my best bud for years, and like I haven't seen him forever. He's out of my life, and it doesn't feel the same without him. And then by 1991, Warren decides he's going to leave Ratt, and he says, so Warren's out of the band, my best bud Robin's out of the band, and he goes, at that point I thought, F it, it's not the same. And he goes, if I'm not feeling it in my heart, I don't want to do it. And then he went and formed Arcade with Fred Corey, and that was.
And I was a big fan of that band.
Yeah.
I really liked what he was doing with that band.
Yeah, and so I mean, Steven kind of walked away from his own band. That would have been the time to say, okay, we're just going to kind of get these new. I get the feeling though from reading his book and from all the stuff I've heard him talk about over the years that, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. He goes, and then in this latest interview, that I'll send you the link so you can check it out. He was saying when he kind of let it out about that he'd been battling liver cancer, he said, look, he goes, I'm working on a new solo album now. He goes, I want it to be a little different. I got a ton of tunes, so I think we're gonna make it a double album. He goes, so people will get something a little extra. He says that's cool. He goes, anytime I write a song, I want it to be a Ratt tune, but he goes, if I can't get the other guys to kind of go along with me and he goes, maybe we can make one final album and go out on top. He says, but if they don't want to do that, I'll just be a solo artist.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning too with when he put Arcade together, that featured Fred Coury from Cinderella on drums too. Oh. Yeah, they had a great video when they first came out. I thought, man, this is every bit as good as Ratt. And then you just didn't hear too much more from them. Yeah, they had a couple of records out, but I guess that first one was really as close to
the Ratt sound,
old school Ratt sound. As you were going to get,
Yeah, and it's funny, talking about Fred Coury, the drummer from Arcade and Cinderella. I don't know if you know this, but like he did not join Cinderella in time to record the debut album, but he toured with the band all behind that album. And by the time it came to record the second album, the producer of a record company, which Andy Johns, a legendary producer, worked with Led Zeppelin. He decided he did not want Fred Coury playing on that second Cinderella album. So you know who he got replaced on the album by? Cozy Powell.
How about that?
Yeah, but he still stayed in the band and toured behind it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny how these things kind of work out.
Yeah, I bet it wasn't too funny to him though.
Yeah, and talking about Stephen Piercy and Bobby Blotzer, like I said, Steven's thing is wanting to get all the guys in Ratt back, like we've been talking about, for one final album. If they do it, but Bobby Blotzer is all of a sudden his new best friend, and I say, okay, maybe he got his brain back, so that's good, and I think it would be cool to have all 4 guys kind of do it one more time.
Oh, absolutely, and they should. While they're still around and while we still maybe possibly can, definitely they should take advantage of that and write a new album if possible, tour if possible. I mean, it would be a treat for fans to see for sure.
Yeah, and then we before we wrap this up tonight, I also got included in here. Ratt had been, they'd been apart on hiatus for many, many years, and then in 1996, they decided, hey, let's this is going back a little ways now. They decided let's get back together. As far as Steven, Warren, and Bobby, they offered, hey Juan, how about you? At the time he wasn't getting along with Steven. He says, I don't, he's still heavy drinker. I don't know that I want to be involved with that. So then they got this guy, Robbie Krieger, who at that time most people knew from, if you got Vince Neil's first solo album, he plays on that. He plays in Black Star Riders now, which is basically, Thin Liz, current version of Thin Lizzy. And so he's made quite a name for himself, Robbie Krieger, but Juan Crosby was out of the band for like 20 years, like we said, and they were initially going to have Rob and Crosby come back because, again, this is like Steven's, best bud from, many years back in San Diego. Wanted to try to get him back, but in '96, Robin's still dealing with his addiction.
Right.
He is at that point, from what I understand, he was living in Texas, and he moved everything. He moved out from Texas back to LA with hope he's going to be back in Ratt. They go in the studio to work on their first new album in years, and Robin goes in the studio and they said the guy could not play, and he says, broke my heart. I didn't want to have to tell him that, but we got to think about what's best for the band, and we weren't going to have him playing on the album like that. We weren't going to take him out. Plus they said he was in no shape, health wise, and so again, Robin Crosby, I think this is a guy somebody needs to write a book or make a movie about, because it is breathtaking when you stop and think. I mean, this, like he even said in the documentary, nobody feels sorry for me. I've lived the life of 10 men. I've seen my dreams come true. Which, when you think of the way this guy, died and he went down the way he did, by the time he died, like he lost all his money, to his habit. He was living like in a little dinky apartment, in West Hollywood, I think just like not even a studio apartment. And so, anybody that thinks Robin Crosby died rich, off of his royalty checks or living in any kind of mansion, they would be sadly mistaken.
Well, that was part of the problem. He stayed living in California. A little studio apartment down there is probably about $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
So, also, I want to talk about Infestation.
Yeah.
I was excited when I seen this. That Ratt was back together. For the most part, and they put a new record out. It came out on Roadrunner Records, and it had that old school Ratt sound and feel back to it. And I kind of thought at that point, okay, you know what? Maybe Ratt's back. This could work. This is sounding like old Ratt, in a new way. And I was really digging it. I really liked that record, and it's a shame that they couldn't capitalize on that and build off of that more. But,
and now,
as they cited, tensions with the band reared their head, and Ratt went back into hiatus.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's sad because they had such huge success with that, and that was a major comeback album, I think you could say. And I love the single.
Yeah, number 30 on Billboard. It hit. Yeah.
I love the single "Best of Me," and what people should know about that is. Carlos Cavazzo, that's his only Ratt album he plays on, but he had just joined the band at that point. It's his first album with the band, and he is listed as a co-writer on that. So, the first thing they come out swinging with, they make a video for it. It's all over, MTV and the radio, and the internet radio, whatever you want to call it. And they have a big hit with that song, Best of Me. He's a co-writer on that.
Nice.
Yeah, and in fact, after all this legal stuff they went through, the band is kind of ended up in, I don't know what the truth is, but from what I understand, by the end of the court, the court thing, Ratt was in the hands of Warren DeMartini, Stephen Piercy, and Juan Crosby. They all owned a piece of a Ratt name, and Bobby Blotzer had kind of been voted out of the band, so he doesn't own anything. But then, for whatever reason, and I think it has more to do with Blotzer and Warren not really wanting to have anything. Warren just kind of walked away from Ratt too, but I think that if he wanted to be back in Ratt, I'm sure they would let him, because I heard Steven in this recent interview saying, he goes, I haven't talked to him recently, but I've talked to his people or whatever that means. He's like, we would love to have him in the band. So I don't know if Warren has a piece of Ratt name or not, but I think. Well,
they should.
But
and
I think
in my opinion, or whatever it is or isn't worth.
Yeah.
To me, if there's any future Ratt reunion, future Ratt albums, future Ratt tours, It should feature Stephen Piercy and Warren DeMartini, at least those two. Absolutely, hands down.
Yeah. See, I think you need Warren.
I think a lot of fans would agree with me on that. Yeah. But sadly, in 2012, Piercy said Ratt was in the process of writing material for a new album, which would have been great.
Yeah.
Planned to be released that summer. Robbie Krieger announced that he was leaving Ratt to work with Lynch Mob.
Yeah.
And then there was rumors flying around that Juan was going to rejoin the band. They were confirmed that he was going to play with Ratt at the M3 Festival on May 12th. Then shortly after that, April 24th, 2014, Piercy announced that he was done, tired of the bullshit, and he was going to have nothing to do with Ratt anymore in any way, shape, or form. Unresolved business, personal attacks, threats in a public forum, and most of all, the disrespect to our fans.
And that's all talking about the drummer.
That was probably Bobby.
Yeah. I know it is because I followed all this, and that's what I'm saying. Steven and Juan and Warren, they kind of all stuck on one side, and he was trashing them and saying all this shit about the judge and the court. And that's a huge reason why things didn't go his way. And he was attacking fans and all that. And that's what I kind of respect about those guys. They didn't kind of return the mudslinging. And the other thing is, I kind of respect Steven for that fact because he very could have easily said, you know what, the Ratt name is, I own a piece of it. You don't own nothing now. They could have very easily said, which they eventually did after they got the name, you know what, Bob, you're out. But they waited until after the court thing. And see, Steven got so pissed that while he should have just kind of said, well, I own a piece of name, whatever. I've heard him talk about this many times. He's like, if I'm not having fun, man, what am I going to stay in a band that I'm not having fun in? He goes, what's the point? And I kind of respect that,
Yeah.
But then he could just at this point kind of walk away rather than like he says, that's the thing. He says, I don't want to tarnish our legacy. I don't want to tarnish the Ratt name with all this BS, And
reading a little bit of this stuff, it sounds like that Bobby was kind of business savvy in the way that he secured a trademark. Now, if he secured an international trademark, then he owns a big stake of that.
Okay.
So that's how he got the upper hand against Piercy and Warren DeMartini.
But
so allowing him to do that kind of fucked him.
Well, here's the thing you may not know about that, Joe, because in the end Bobby ended up fucking himself, because here's why. By Bobby filing a suit against Steven and Warren and Juan especially, he was really going after Juan mainly. He thought, Juan's been out of the band 20 years, he shouldn't have a piece of anything. And because he did that, there's all this discovery the lawyers discovered, and what they discovered was the original Ratt agreement, which was that the 5 original members, which is including Robin Crosby, is no longer with us. Supposedly each owned a piece of whatever, and each, they could vote. They could, majority could vote other people out of the band or whatever, and or somebody leaves or something. So they had never set the original agreement. They never made it legal. So
right.
what Bobby,
so he was expelled from the partnership.
Yeah. So what Bobby was trying to do, saying, okay, well, they left, so I own the Ratt name or whatever. That wasn't true.
For trademark infringement.
Yeah, but that wasn't true anymore because the original agreement was never legally made official. So they had to go back and, or that's what it was. They had to go back and be with. They had to, because that's what it was. So the original agreement was legally binding, but then when they did the reunion and Steven left the band for the second time, Bobby just naturally assumed that okay. We formed a new corporation. We're going to call it WBS, which was Warren, Bobby, and Steven. And but what they found out when they formed that WBS, and they sued Steven the first time they found out, supposedly Warren and Bobby own the band now, but what they did with WBS, they never put it, they never did it legally. So the original agreement stuck. And that's what I'm saying. If Bobby had never sued Juan, they never would have found that out. And he might have gone away with getting the Ratt name.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember the name of it, and I don't see it anywhere listed, but Stephen Piercy came out with a solo record not long ago. Do you recall the name of that?
Okay, yeah. There's 2 of them. Probably the one you're thinking of, the first one came out was called Smash. that's probably got a little more of a hit.
That don't sound familiar. What was the latest one?
Oh, I got it. Something with a viewer. I'll get the name for you later. I can email. But yeah,
there was some really good, promising songs on that. He had a couple of videos that he put out, and they were good. I thought the stuff that he was writing was.
Yeah, and I can't wait. I can't wait for this.
I mean, it was up there. It was good. You could tell that Stephen Piercy was definitely a big part of the Ratt sound and the Ratt name.
Well, there's no denying that. I mean,
he went on with these other projects and did this, kind of the same thing. He didn't have the commercial success that Ratt had, but he had success nonetheless and was able to tour and continue on as a professional musician. And some of these other guys, not so much so.
Yeah, well, he really is the sound and the voice of Ratt. I mean, they had this guy, Jizzy Pearl, who's now in Quiet Riot, and, he had his own band, Love Hate. And so he's got his own thing going, Jizzy. But, he was just kind of filling the shoes for Steven until he returned. Before they had Jizzy Pearl, though, I don't know if you know, briefly when Bobby, Blotzer, and Warren were kind of running the show, and Steven wasn't in the band for a while, before they got Jizzy, they actually auditioned Robert Mason.
Yeah. Yep, I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a name like that, I gotta say it. The elephant's in the room.
Yeah.
Why would you pick a name like Jizzy? I mean, that's just so stupid and lame.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's as gay as you get.
Yeah. Well, the other point you were making about Warren, like saying, I really don't think they can do Ratt without Warren. And in this recent interview, again, I'm sending the link later, Joe, for George Lynch to check out. He was saying, he goes, when he was offered a gig to replace Warren, he kind of made the decision not to. He said, because they didn't really care, but one way, because they would have liked me to join, but I'm not going to join if I'm just a hired gun. And he says they're kind of feeling, their management's feeling, we don't need Warren. We could just get anybody to kind of come in here and play leads, and we won't even have to pay them as much, because that's kind of their attitude. And he says, I think they're starting to see with this new guy they got. Yeah, he can play those flashy leads, but he's no Warren DeMartini. And if given a choice, the fans would much rather have Warren in the band. And I think so would Steven. But to even further that point, now we mentioned Carlos Cavazo was in the band. When they first kicked Bobby Blotzer out of the band, they had this guy named Jimmy DeGrasso. He's played with everybody from Alice Cooper, White Lion, Megadeth, and both Jimmy. Okay, you think for a guy like Jimmy DeGrasso, he has no problem getting gigs, but you think like playing with Ratt would be a great gig for him. You think for a guy like Carlos Cavazo, yeah, I can come in here and do this thing. But he said Carlos left at that point. Jimmy left. They said, we're not doing Ratt if Warren's not here.
Right.
And I think that speaks volumes about Warren Martini.
Yeah, absolutely it does. But going back to Stephen Piercy's solo record, he actually put out 4 solo records under his own label.
Top Fuel Records, yes.
And the one I was talking about was called View to a Thrill.
There you go, that's it, yeah.
And that's got some good songs on it. If you're not familiar with that, check that one out.
And I will also
There's
tell
some really cool songs on that. There's a couple of videos he has online.
Yeah. And the one
that were really good, And I'm also going to look into that book, Sex, Drugs, and Ratt and Roll.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's some stuff in there talking about Bobby Blotzer, where talking about how he would get in these arguments with Steven, and he'd spit on him, and he'd be telling him like how to hold his mic and how he should perform and all this. This coming from a drummer.
Yeah. Some people think they know everything.
And talking about the View to a Thrill album, I forget what song it is, but Robbie Krieger from Doors, he plays a solo on the album.
Oh wow.
And the album before that, I really think you should check out too, is called Smash, and probably the one song you've heard. There's this. He had a hit single it's called I Can't Take It, and that's the first thing he's done with Beau Hill in years, the original Ratt producer. And Steven also, a lot of times what he does now these days as a solo artist is he'll release like a track at a time. It's kind of a modern way that artists release stuff. And maybe when he gets like 10 or 11 songs, he'll put it out on a CD. And from what I understand, like I said, he's working on a new solo album supposed to come out by the end of the year. He wants it to be a double album. So that's something to kind of really look forward to,
Oh, for sure it is.
And I dig all his stuff, and I really can't picture. I mean, it's happened. Like I said, we had Jizzy Pearl and even briefly Robert Mason for a gig or two. But I really can't picture Ratt without Steven either. And I got to give credit to Warren too, because when him and Bobby were running Ratt, Bobby had wanted, as you can imagine, we should do a new Ratt album, and he's going out there telling people, we're going to do a new Ratt album, but Warren refused to do it. He's like, no, unless Steven's on the album, I don't want to do any new Ratt music. And so, again, you got to give credit to the guy that, he could kind of just use that Ratt name, and sure, they were going out there and gigging as Ratt, but he didn't want to put out any new Ratt music unless it featured, Stephen Piercy.
Right. Well, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Ratt, they need to put aside the bullshit and work it out. And Warren DeMartini and Stephen Piercy need to be part of it, or forget it.
Yeah.
To me, as a fan, forget it if it doesn't have Stephen Piercy and Warren DeMartini in it.
Yeah.
Whoever else fills those other spots, it's important, and they got to be good. And it would be great if Juan could be there too, and some of the other guys, But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well,
Stephen Piercy and Warren DeMartini need to be part of that, or forget it, bury it, leave it alone.
Yeah.
On that note, August 21st in Syracuse, New York, Ratt is playing the New York State Fair.
Oh wow!
So if you're out on the East Coast, anybody listening, you can check out whatever version is left of Ratt.
Now here's the interesting thing too is I had mentioned that Juan had done a gig, and I actually I was friends with the drummer in Juan's band. He's now the drummer in Ratt too. His name is Pete Holmes. He used to be
Black and Blue, right?
Black and Blues drummer. He's a pretty cool guy. Met him and I talked to him, and he actually invited me to when they did a show down here in LA, and it was a little tiny club, but anyways, great show. And I got to give Juan credit because he's. Now, I will tell you, if you give him a choice, would I rather see a Ratt show with Stephen Piercy as a lead singer? Definitely. But I'll tell you, Juan's a pretty good singer in his own right. I mean, he's really responsible for the background vocal sound of Ratt, really kind of like Michael Anthony is to Van Halen.
Yeah, absolutely, he is. And he was a big part of that.
And I got to give a guy credit because he's a great. He does a decent job as a lead singer. Maybe stick to your day job as the bass player. But when I went to see his solo show, he played all these Ratt tunes that I grew up on, and it was a pretty awesome show, for what it was.
Cool.
And so I did not have as big of a problem with him doing that because again, here's one of the 4 guys that wrote all those Ratt hits. So if anybody's got a right to go out and do that, he does.
Yeah. Yeah, it still, wouldn't it be awesome, though, if they could do a reunion and
sure.
have Warren DeMartini, Stephen Piercy, and at least Juan, those 3 together?
Yeah, and here...
That's how it should be. That would be Ratt.
And here's the thing, of all the guys, though, that I think... And they said, Warren DeMartini, he is kind of like a real recluse. He doesn't do it, doesn't really do a ton of interviews. He doesn't like to...
doesn't like to be in the limelight.
He doesn't like to badmouth. He doesn't like to talk to trash. So, you might occasionally see him give an interview to Guitar World magazine. Maybe on the 40th anniversary of whatever album they're talking about. But they're saying too. The thing is, of all the guys in Ratt, probably Warren. Warren is the one that probably doesn't need to really do much of any. I mean, he could just sit and do nothing the rest of his life, and he's going to be all right because apparently, from what I was reading, he is an heir of the Hershey chocolate family.
Yeah, so he's probably not hurting too bad. Doesn't really need to do anything unless he really feels like doing it.
Yeah, and I think like Steven, he's one of these guys that doesn't really want to do it unless it's going to be fun. He doesn't want to go bickering with his bandmates for every gig.
No, as much bad blood and as much turmoil as there has been, I don't blame any of them guys for just saying, fuck it, never mind, you know?
And it's sad because from what I understand, the other 3 guys, Warren, Steven, and Juan, they get along all right. It's just the one guy that kind of, Yeah,
the bad apple on the bunch, right?
Yeah. And I think he's the one that they... he's the one I think they don't really need, which, is kind of sad, but Steven... I guess he's got a right to want to do whatever he wants to do. Because again, this is a guy that recently battled liver cancer. Maybe he's got a different perspective from that end. Hey, let's do one more great. Let's go out, on top with
go
all
on a good note,
yeah.
on a positive note.
Yeah.
Well, that's the right attitude to have, and he's probably wanting to put to rest all of that bad blood and all those bickering and all that fighting and all that bullshit, and wanting to just go out there and have fun and be Ratt again, maybe, in his heart, that's maybe kind of where he's at.
And the last thing I'm going to say about Bobby Blotzer, but it's kind of comical, is he's kind of made the decision. I mean, he did this interview I came across where he was basically saying, well, yeah, I'd love to get back together with the Ratt guys, after all this legal stuff he put them through. And he's saying, but, if Ratt doesn't get back together, I think I'll just go ahead and retire. And I'm like thinking, I don't know that you have much choice,
Yeah, I don't think that there's probably a lot of people banging down his door with all the bullshit that he put those guys through and all the turmoil that he caused. Word gets around, and a lot of those other bands that toured and were friends with Ratt and things like that. They find stuff out like that. And why would you want to work with the guy that caused that much of a shit show?
Yeah. And I think we're going to end tonight's episode, Joe, with this, because I want to end it on a high note. Well, in this sense that Robin Crosby, like I said, he in his day, when he was in his prime, I mean, great guitar player, great songwriter. I mean, you hear any of our Ratt fans talk too. They talk about how much they love Robin, how cool he was to them, and more than anything, you hear people say, forget about Robin Crosby being a great songwriter. He was a great human being, just the way he treated people. And well,
that's what it comes down to, man. That's the most important thing. And I noticed something pretty cool on the Ratt website that they had a condolences to Robin and his family, and an old picture of him with Tawny when they were both real young.
Yeah.
I thought, so if you get a chance, go check out the official Ratt website. That's kind of cool to see,
Yeah, and I got to say this before we go too about Robin. It just kind of dawned on me when I got the idea to do a show on Ratt, because as you can hear from my talk, I'm a huge Ratt fan, and if anything, at the end of the day, we got all these great Ratt songs that I still listen to. Great catalog of music.
I think every one of their albums, honestly, probably had at least one or two really good songs on it.
Well, that's the thing. Back in the day, Ratt, I mean, that's the one kind of guarantee you could have about getting a Ratt album. It is not going to just have one great song. I mean, it was all killer to me. I mean, there's a couple tunes that maybe I wasn't too crazy about, but see, they were always kind of rivaling Motley Crue, and Motley always, Motley Crue for whatever reason got a little more exposure than Ratt, but there's no denying their catalog of music. And about Robin Crosby, I was going to close with, it just kind of dawned on me that next year's going to mark the 20th anniversary of this guy's, passing. But at the end of the day, look at all these great songs that him and Ratt have given us.
Yeah. He was part of a legacy, no doubt about it.
And it's funny, Steven, even like if you go to his Facebook page or his official page, he's always posting pictures of him and Robin. Anytime he does an interview, he talks about. In fact, in this what I'm going to send you the link to later, he's talking.
Yeah, they were buds. That was his buddy.
He's talking about even
at the very beginning.
He says he's even talking about recently. He goes, when I have a problem, he goes, people think I'm crazy or whatever. He goes, but I sit down and talk to Robin. Sometimes I think he answers me, He goes, call me crazy, but that's where my head is at.
Yeah. There's a special bond there with your songwriting partners, and I know exactly what he's talking about and how he feels with that. Absolutely, 100%.
And the thing is, like if we never get another Ratt tour, any more Ratt music. We have a Stephen Piercy solo album coming out this year to look forward to, and that's the thing. When you go to a Stephen Piercy concert, you're not just going to get Stephen Piercy solo material. He plays a lot of that Ratt stuff because, like he says, that's what fans want to hear. That's what made me famous. They don't want to hear the latest single off my solo album. They want to hear Round and Round.
Right, exactly.
Oh, before we go, that's the other thing I got to end this on. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but it's kind of funny to believe, like 30 years after fact. Let me ask you, Joe, did you ever see that recent Geico commercial that Ratt did? 30 years after.
It was pretty comical. Yeah.
And it's the current lineup of Ratt, which is Steven and Pete Holmes, Juan Crosier, and the current guitar player. But But what's funny about doing that commercial is fans are not only hearing Round and Round on TV, 30 years after the fact, people are just discovering that song. So much to the point, just because it was on that commercial, I forget what it charted at, but that song, after 30 years, was back on the charts, on the Billboard chart because of that TV commercial.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are creatures of habit, and when you remind them of their past, of something like that, they go back and listen to it. They check it out on Spotify, iTunes, or whatever, and it blows up.
And what's cool about that is not just guys like you and me that were there back 30 years ago when this stuff came out, but kids that were either not born or they're just little infants and they had no idea about this stuff 30 years ago. They're just discovering how great it is.
Yeah, exactly. And shame on their parents if they haven't introduced them to cool music. I know I've done my part in introducing my daughter to some cool music, or at least trying. But I mean, it's a first-time experience, like you said, for a lot of these kids, a lot of these people that have never heard this, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool,"
Yeah. Well, Joe.
Even if they think it's a joke and they're listening to it, they're still listening to it.
Joe, I got to tell you, one thing I enjoy about doing This Is Metal with you is sometimes like you surprise the hell out of me. Like I'm going into this tonight thinking, Joe's probably not as big of a Ratt fan as I am. Maybe you are. But I can tell you have just as much enthusiasm for these songs and this band as I do.
Oh, yeah. I loved Ratt, that genre or area of my life. I still listen to stuff like that. I still enjoy Motley Crue and Ratt and Skid Row and some of those bands. Absolutely.
And that's too, that's the thing is like, back when Ratt and Motley Crue were big, in the 80s, all these bands had these guitar heroes. And then, when you get to new metal, like in the early 90s, a lot of those bands like Limp Bizkit Limp Bizkit may have been kind of the exception, but these other new metal bands are like, we don't do guitar solos. I was like, why the hell not?
Right? Because they don't know how to play it. Because they went from step 1 to step 10 and skipped all the middle parts about music theory and how to play and put a guitar solo or a song together, for that matter.
Yeah, and just to kind of prove your point about
the first part of that band's name should have told everybody, Limp.
Yeah. And talk about Limp Bizkit. Not that I really do, but I seen a picture. I don't know if you've seen this recently on Facebook, all over internet, Fred Durst, and Limp Bizkit's back in the news just because of his dude's hairdo. He played Lala.
Yeah. We're not to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to be doing an interview on Black Label Society, and I've got some interesting stories. I'm sure you've heard of them, maybe too. The rivalry between Fred Durst and Zach. So
let me ask you, Joe. You were in the driver's seat as far as this goes. We're definitely going to do a show on both, but I'm going to give you the choice of which one you want to do first. Next week, originally, we were going to be talking about Forbidden. Do you still want to stick with that schedule, or would you rather do Black Label first, or does it matter? Let's mix it up. Let's put Zach in there, man. Okay. Yeah, let's do Black Label Society next. Okay, and then we will do the Forbidden, because that's one band that, again, I got to tell you, I don't really know too much about, so I'm going to have to do my homework, but I knew a whole lot about Ratt, so I thought that would be fun to talk about for so many reasons, but just getting back to... we did. And just getting back to what you're saying about Warren DeMartini, it's kind of funny, Ratt was one of those bands, like you were saying, in the era of the guitar hero, Joe. And what's interesting is, when Robin Crosby first was kicked out of the band, they tried bringing a guy like Michael Schenker. Well, maybe they thought, okay, Michael Schenker, he's from the Scorpions, UFO, he's got a, but then him in the band with Warren DeMartini, I don't know that that really worked for whatever reason, but even a guy like Michael Schenker, he wasn't able to fill those heavy shoes. Yeah. I don't know why it didn't work, or the true story behind it. But Michael Schenker is an amazing guitar player in his own right. There's no doubt in that. Well, I think he's a little Richie Blackmore.
It's a fickle thing, this chemistry thing when you're dealing with a band and music, and we've discussed it about singers, but it goes deeper than that. It's guitar players and drummers and everybody as well. There's a certain chemistry sometimes with the band, and when you alter that, sometimes it just doesn't work.
And sometimes it can be something even as simple as bringing a European guitar god into a Hollywood rock band. I mean, full of Americans. Not that, but I think it has more to do with maybe even Michael Schenker is a little more Richie Blackmore in the sense that he likes to be in his own band. He likes to call his own shots.
Right.
Well, Joe, we're gonna.
He was probably just doing that for a paycheck.
Yeah. Which I mean, he doesn't really need to do, but you could see, okay, yeah, I could make $1 million, playing a gig with them or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, Joe, thanks for doing this tonight, and I'll be talking to you. We will talk some Zakk Wylde and Black Label next week, and kind of amazing. Probably another thing we'll be talking about next week when we do Black Label is James Laminza, which you and I kind of called it. He's back in Megadeth.
Yep, and he has ties to the Black Label Society as well.
Yeah. Okay, Joe, you take care, buddy.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care, brother.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.